Welcome back to the Good Leader Podcast with John Martinez. Today's episode is titled Stay Dangerous. And no, we're not talking about being reckless or violent. We're talking about being capable, prepared, and disciplined. We're redefining what it means to be a dangerous man in today's world. Let's dive in. Redefining dangerous is not what you think. Let's start with the idea of dangerous. I think a lot of people hear the word and assume aggression, recklessness, even toxicity. But when you talk about staying dangerous, what does that actually mean to you?
To me, the whole concept of when I'm telling people stay dangerous is just to be a capable and ready man and be, mentally, physically, spiritually prepared for anything that may come along in life. It doesn't mean to be overly aggressive. Doesn't mean that you think you're an alpha male type person or you're trying to intimidate people. It just means to be the best kind of version of yourself, because ultimately the more prepared you are, the more you can take care of yourself. You can also protect other people and do things. So it's like that whole concept of staying dangerous. I almost want to say it means like staying safe, being the best version of yourself and constantly sharpening that edge. So that's why the dangerous part comes into it. And it's when I kind of look down, it's because I'm looking at my notes with just little things I want to touch on, and it's and I think it goes kind of into the topic of being a strong man is a dangerous man, because one of the things I saw, especially when I was teaching as an instructor a lot of the people assume that they're gonna do certain things in the heat of the moment, right? Like if someone were to attack them, they're gonna do this and they're gonna do that, and they're not going to, and that they'll be ready. And that's not the case. I could tell you that from seeing it hundreds of times. Like someone who's never been in a fight, thinking, "Hey, we're gonna do a mock type fight, and they're gonna be ready to fight." It doesn't happen. They're losing their cardio is not good. They're losing mentally, not prepared. A lot of aspects go into it. So the whole concept of staying dangerous is just to be ready to put yourself in uncomfortable situations beforehand, so you're ready for if they happen to you in real life. That's the whole concept of, to me, for the stay dangerous.
So it's more about being ready than reactive, right? Knowing when to stand firm and when to stand down. I feel like that's what real strength looks like. Not the loudest guy in the room, but the one who could act and choose not to. Now let's talk about mental side of things. You said before that the most dangerous weapon is between your ears. What does that look like on a daily basis?
I think on a daily basis, your brain is ultimately the thing that can get you in and out of a lot of situations. It being aware of your surroundings. I think a lot of times nowadays, I think that the most common thing you can point out is people on their phones. I don't go anywhere without seeing someone so engrossed in whatever's going on with their phone that they're not paying attention to what's going on around them. You see with girls and guys, so I'm not even signaling one group out. And where I think that becomes an issue is if you're walking to your car, being in a scenario where someone's watching you and you're not paying attention, crossing the street, driving, all these other things that people are like literally putting their lives in danger by just not paying attention. Also, it knows how to read the room, like the situations, and not putting yourself in bad situations. There's a good book called The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker. It goes way more into detail than I do, but it talks about just trusting your instincts sometimes when you're encountering certain people or certain situations, and how to basically navigate in those areas. One of the things that I used to tell people for myself is that when I worked in the jails, you could look at a section, and the vibe and the energy of the room would tell you that something was going to happen. And little kind of like threat indicators, right? Like, hey, why does everyone have their shoes on? Because sometimes they can wear flip-flops, but not everyone has their shoes on. Why does everyone fully dressed? Why are certain people looking up at the control room and seeing what's going on? Those are usually what we'd call a threat indicator. Like something is off and something's gonna happen. You don't really know what it is, but you could feel the energy, you could feel the vibe. So your mind's trying to alert you, and it's gonna give you signals, but you have to pay attention. So that's why your mind is the best weapon, and also how to keep yourself. I think in a state of calm if something bad does happen, learning to, I want to say, what if every scenario, but also like, hey, if and it doesn't have to be something crazy, because sometimes I think people associate it with like it's only a law enforcement or military thing to think like this, and it's not. It's just little simple things like where, hey, if I got into a car accident, where's my insurance, where's my registration, who would I notify? Just little things like that, if you walk through, I feel like you're better prepared to deal with those situations rather than wait for it to happen. And then you see a lot of people freeze and they don't know what happens. They just kind of sit there, and I think they have we used to call it going into the black. Basically, they don't know what to do because they never thought this was going to happen to them. So they just kind of freeze. That's why when you see a lot of videos of guys or girls or whoever, and they're getting attacked or something's happening to them, and everyone's like, why aren't they reacting? They didn't do anything. It's usually not because they are just like cowardly or anything. They just never thought about what to do, and they don't know what to do, so they just don't do anything. And then at that point, they become victims. So, use your mind, prepare in advance, and you'll be better prepared when the situation, comes your way.
Right. I think people underestimate the cost of having an untrained mind. There's a quote that was mentioned before: an untrained mind is a liability. That hits hard. Okay, so let's get into the physical. I think you told me earlier that you're doing the April Murph challenge right now.
Yes.
Tell me about the role fitness plays into staying dangerous.
The physical fitness part comes in because I feel like the stronger you are physically, the stronger you are mentally. That doesn't always work that way. It doesn't always go hand in hand. But a lesson that I learned a long time ago in a class called Crisis Intervention Training was we talked to a therapist in the class, and he said the act of physically making yourself stronger is like telling yourself you're trying to become stronger. Like you're mentally telling yourself to become stronger. So it starts with helping you build yourself up. That's why you hear a lot of people when they go through divorce, death in the family, they start working out or they throw themselves into something like that because they're trying to kind of rebuild themselves, from scratch and become a stronger version of themselves. And also being able to do things that need to be done in emergency situations are certain. You should be able to pick up your kids. You should be able to run a fair bit of distance if you needed to get away with them or for yourself or something. And that's where I talk about when I used to train people. I saw a lot of people like, hey, I think I'm going to do this, but they physically couldn't do it. And then even if and it wasn't to be a dick, but sometimes in that moment I would tell them, do what you tell me you're going to do it. And they couldn't. And it gave them a reality check more to help them and understand, like, it takes time and it does take effort. It's not always easy. Me doing the April Murph challenge is basically like every week I'm doing like a longer version of the Murph, where I'm kind of starting from scratch, where I was doing 100 push-ups, 50 pull-ups, walking. I was walking half a mile like before and after because I had a sinus infection, but I should be running, just things like that, try to get up to doing the full Murph. And I just like to do things like that just to keep myself kind of mentally engaged in my workout. I don't like to go to the gym and just feel like I'm going through the motions. I want to be able to go there and feel like I'm actually challenging myself, and that way it prepares me in the long run to deal with any kind of life challenges. And it just being busy over, I think Miguel probably feels the same way. Like, you're working a full job, doing the podcast, trying to run a business, trying to spend time with your family or your kids or whatever. That all takes energy. And if it is not going to happen, just through will, it may for a little bit, but eventually at some point you're going to burn yourself out. I find that me working out as a kind of stress reliever, and it gives me the strength and the energy to do all these things where I'm not sure. I think if I was to be doing other things and I'm not sure that I would be able to do all these things. So
yeah, you're not saying that you need to look like a movie star, but you do need to be able to carry your kid out of the burning house, defend your home, or just push through when life gets hard.
Yes.
That kind of physical readiness speaks to self-respect, right?
Yes.
Let's shift to the emotional control of it. This is huge. A lot of guys think being alpha means being loud and aggressive, but I'd argue that the most dangerous men are the ones who don't flinch under pressure. What do you think?
No, I agree. I've never the whole alpha male type of thing. Even even some of the gym clothes. I'm not gonna mention any names, but I don't like that stuff. I've been, I grew up in an area of Ventura County, prominently gang heavy. I went to the military. I've worked in prisons, and I was in law enforcement. I never saw where being an alpha male was like a good thing. Like, it's good to be aggressive. It's good to be, to be assertive and know when to act. But most of the guys that act like that, to me, it seemed to be more of a weakness than it was ever a strength, because that only gets you so far. Maybe, when you go to like basic training and someone's yelling and puffing their chest out and you don't know any better, you're like, oh, what's that? But as you go get deeper into training yourself, working out or any other type of training, it doesn't get you that far. I don't think most of the time when you see, I guess, like UFC fighters or jiu-jitsu, I've never, at least myself, I've never come across any of those guys that act particularly like overly aggressive. It's usually more of a, when you know what you can do, I think you almost feel the need not to act like that's more restraint. You learn to restrain yourself more and be a little bit more humble. And I think the path to getting there kind of brings about that humbleness, because if you're not humble going into it, you're going to get beat up. People are going to like put you in your place sooner or later. I remember doing Krav Maga for a while, and we would get these guys that would come in and they would just they're not really trying to train. They're almost trying to really fight you. And after a while, you're like, okay, if you want to hit me for reals, I'm going to hit you for reals. And until eventually they get the point of like, hey, we're training, we're trying to get better. It's not about, this is not about who's the alpha of the group or anything like that. So yeah, the whole concept is, I don't think it's a good thing. I think you can, I think if you really are that type of person, you don't really have to say much. I think your presence, your background, things that you're capable of doing are gonna say it louder than any words or your attitude can. So
yeah, that kind of self-mastery, man, it's rare. Mm-hmm. The guys who don't get rattled, who can respond instead of react, that's next level. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of leadership we need more of. All right, last one, and maybe this is the most important: purpose. Because a man with no direction is a danger to himself, but a man with a mission, that's power, that's legacy. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. I think when you don't have a direction or a goal or a purpose, you're lacking the drive or the will to motivate yourself, which, ultimately you're trying to then get to being disciplined and habit to get to places that, you need to go to. And I think that's that is the hard part, because without, direction, you're kind of like a, what they call them, a nomad. If you're just wandering from place to place, you're not, where are you trying to go? And I think those are the people that end up feeling that they feel lost, or they end up feeling like they're not getting things done. They're going to their job and it feels mundane to them because they don't have a higher purpose. Me just speaking for myself, I've always given myself a direction of things a place I'm trying to go, right? Like, I don't think on purpose coming out of high school, it was like I necessarily had this is direction, but I knew I wanted to go to the military. So that ended up being my direction. After the military, I knew that, hey, at some point I wanted to go into law enforcement. So even though my path would take me different ways, ultimately I ended up going in that direction. Coming out of law enforcement, now it's to do, to be a business owner and build a brand. So that's my direction. So ultimately I'm always driving towards this purpose. And even if I get off track a little bit here and there, it's like you can kind of see your North Star in the distance. So you're ultimately, even if you get off course, you can look and say, okay, I need to get back on track. And that's where I think, it's super important to have that direction to kind of to keep yourself aligned. Because if you're not, you're just looking around and you don't know where you're going, and ultimately that leads nowhere.
Yeah, that's what a good leader is about, right? Helping men discover their mission and walk it out daily. Mm-hmm. Not just talking leadership, but living it. Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to expand on as far as like the Good Leader, or what this podcast is for?
For the Good Leader podcast, the goal, I I was talking about it to one of the guys today at work because he was asking me about the two. The goal is to ultimately, help men find their purpose. Maybe have some, tough and funny conversations. It doesn't always have to be super serious. But I think it's that in between, for myself, I listen to a lot of different podcasts and I see a lot of far one way or the other. You see podcasts where they're very, just kind of looking at things going on in the world, whether it be TikTok videos or political things and reacting to those. And then on the other end, you can see things where it's like, Delta Force SEAL operators, a lot of stuff like that. To me, I kind of see, I think I'm trying to speak more to the average, like kind of working man. And it's like almost that, I don't know if anyone's seen that movie, The Bronx Tale, where he says the working man's the real gangster type of thing. And I think that's what people kind of forget sometimes is, it's not everyone is at where they want to be. And for myself, I felt like a lot of the lessons I learned that got me to where I am weren't really taught to me. They were just things that I kind of learned along the way. And I wish like, hey, someone would have had some of these conversations or gave me some advice and some of these things. And so to me, it's just kind of putting that information out there and kind of talking about that stuff. Because even through, doing the podcast did recently with Hector Bravo on Hinge, I had a lot of people on Instagram asking me about, hey, I'm in the police academy. What do you think I should do for, working out? What was your experience in law enforcement? Things, light attracts light. So ultimately, I think by putting out a message of saying, hey, let's all work together to be better versions of ourselves. You don't need to be a first responder. You don't need to be in the military to consider yourself, a capable man or a dangerous man or anything. Like, you just need to be the man that you're trying to be. And I think that's what my message is. Like, don't think that you're less than, and also understand like the standard that you kind of hold yourself to is where you're going to go. So if you don't see yourself as becoming anything, then you're never going to be anything. If you do see yourself as becoming something, even if you don't know what that is, then that's what this podcast is for, to kind of like get some ideas in your head and say, what, maybe something we talk about or something to say inspires you to look at something different. And I'm not saying that because I have all the answers. I'm saying that because, I've come up having to figure out things on my own and learn things the hard way. So it's basically just passing down that experience. And I think that's what the whole Good Leader podcast is about, is, other good leader, bringing up other good leaders. Cause that's what I got told, that good leaders recognize other good leaders and try to help them. Bad leaders see good leaders and try to stop them. So I think my goal is to try to help other people and bring up the next generation of leaders and men through some of my experiences, and maybe even guys that are, I meet guys my age or that are older than me, just understanding like, hey, you have more control of your life than you think that you do. So, and hopefully something we can talk about, helps, either put you on track or give you that extra motivation and discipline to keep doing what you're doing. Whatever, it works.
John, I love what you're doing here. You're setting a tone that's not just bold, but needed. If you're listening and this resonates with you, share it with someone. Let them know the good leader has arrived. This is only the beginning. And, stay tuned, subscribe, let them know where else they can reach you, man.
You can follow me on Good Leader 805 on Instagram. That's usually where I'm the most active. I kind of stopped posting on TikTok because I don't know, TikTok kind of threw me off a little bit. I would keep getting flagged for offending my audience, I guess. On Instagram, you probably catch me on Instagram the most, and then obviously on this podcast, we got a pretty consistent schedule now. So that was my big kind of thing. That was my goal for myself for this year, to kind of like to get back on the track with the podcast. So just follow me on Instagram, Good Leader 805. And if you have any questions, I'll be posting up things on there, and then you can follow us, and we can help build up the podcast, build up the brand, and I have some other ideas that I'm working on too. So turn it into something else to help a lot of people. Sweet,
yeah, that's awesome, man. I think this Good Leader podcast is going to help a lot a lot of people out there. For all you listeners, make sure you like, subscribe, and share it to those who you think will benefit from this. So without further ado, we are saying good night.